Okay, welcome to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County's Curator's Corner. My name is Thorin Tritter, and I am turning off my phone so it won't make any more noise. And I am the Museum and Programming Director at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center, which is located in Glen Cove, New York. This online program is part of a weekly series that we launched as a way to share information about our museum when the building was closed due to Corona. I'm happy to say that our building has reopened. We do have self-guided visits, people who come in. We encourage you to arrange your visit in advance, to schedule it so that we can maintain social distancing in our galleries. But our building is open, but I'm still doing these programs because of continuing concerns about Corona. Before I start today's talk, let me, as always, encourage you to write any questions you have in the Q&A function of Zoom, and then I will make sure either to respond while I'm doing my presentation or at the end of it. Okay, today I want to focus on a light bulb in the opening gallery of our museum. You know, I did a program about this light bulb a number of months ago, but I wanted to come back to it because it's really an important object in our collection and one that's tied to an amazing family story. You can see from this photo that it is a small object, a small light bulb. You might notice the other object in this image is actually a beer stein. So it's narrower or smaller in circumference than a beer stein. The light bulb was given to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center by Rachel and David Gatenio and David's mother, Stella, who passed away just a few months ago. We're grateful for their donation of this item to our collection and for their generous support to the institution. Here's a slide that shows both sides of the bulb. You can see it has the Star of David on one side and a menorah on the other. And you can see the remains of some blue paint that originally covered more of the bulb. This is a light bulb that is, as far as we know, the last remaining part of a synagogue that once stood in Drama, Greece. It was saved by Carl Gatenio, who had lived in Drama in northeastern Greece before World War II. It was, today the city is a city of around 45,000 people, but in 1939, the city was a smaller place with maybe 1,200 Jews as part of a total population that was maybe only 5,000 or 10,000. But Drama was not far from Salonika, about 90 miles away, which by 1900 had become the largest Jewish city in the world, with some 80,000 Jewish residents. This whole area of northern Greece can trace a Jewish community back to somewhere around 315 BC, when Alexander the Great granted Jews equality under the law in his empire. An even bigger influx of Jews followed two events in the 15th century. First, the Ottoman Empire's conquest of Macedonia in 1430 that ushered in a new era of tolerance for Jews. And second, the expulsion of Jews from the Spanish Empire in 1492. While we don't have figures for how many Jews arrived in Drama in the early 1500s, we do know that some 20,000 Sephardic Jews arrived in Salonika from Spain in the first years of the 16th century. So we're talking about a massive influx that helped establish the golden age of the Sephardic Jewish community in Salonika and in the surrounding area, including in Drama. Salonika became known in particular as Mother to Israel, to local residents, and to non-Jews, it was often referred to as Jerusalem in the Balkans. The Sephardic Jews who traced their roots from Spain were somewhat different from the Ashkenazi Jewish communities in Poland and Germany. Perhaps most notably, the Sephardic Jews of Greece did not speak Yiddish, like those in Poland, but instead spoke Ladino, a language with roots in Old Spanish. The Jewish community flourished in northern Greece into the 20th century, but after World War I, the Greek government passed a series of laws to Hellenize places like Salonika and Drama, segregating Jews and legalizing anti-Semitic activities that spurred an outward migration of some of the Jewish community. Even with that outward migration, though, In 1935, Salonika was still home to 60,000 Jews, and as I said, the much smaller town of Drama still had 1,200. When World War II broke out, the Nazis did not, at least at first, look towards Greece. But in April of 1941, after a failed earlier attack by Italy, Germany invaded Greece across a wide front with troops coming through Albania, Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria. In less than a month, Greece capitulated. Germany left most of Greece to be occupied by Italy, here shown in the blue, but the town of Drama and the surrounding area shown in green went to Bulgaria, who had long sought control of that region. 18 months later, in November of 1942, the Bulgarian government instituted provisions of the equivalent of the Nuremberg laws. Jews in Bulgarian occupation zones were forced to wear the Jewish star. They were forced to submit records about their assets and to live in prescribed areas. They were limited to when they could leave their homes. The Bulgarians then started rounding up young Jewish men who were taken to forced labor camps. Sorry about that. Taken to forced labor camps where they were used as slave labor. Carl Gatenio was one of the Jews rounded up from Drama in 1942 and sent to a forced labor camp. His parents and two sisters remained in Drama, but he would never see them again. 5 months after he was taken east to Bulgaria, on the night of March 3rd, 1943, the Bulgarians arrested his family and all the remaining Jews of Kavala, Drama, Komotini, and elsewhere in that occupied area. They were then gathered together in Drama and sent by train to Bulgaria before being loaded onto boats that took them up the Danube to Vienna, where they took trains to Treblinka. By the end of March, almost all of the 11,000 Jews who'd been rounded up in Drama and the surrounding area had been murdered. In a tragic twist, I think, that hints at the horrifying approach taken by the Bulgarians, the railway that carried the trains transporting Jewish deportees from Drama into Bulgaria was constructed by some of the Jewish forced laborers who had been imprisoned earlier. In fact, it may well be that Carl Gatenio built tracks on which his family would later be deported on. Amazingly, Carl survived until the end of the war in the forced labor camp. When liberated, he initially stayed in the city of Sofia, where he met and fell in love with a young Jewish woman named Stella. Once married, they made their way back to Drama, where Carl hoped to find his family. Carl was one of only 39 Jews from the pre-war population of 1,200 who eventually returned to Drama. 39 from 1,200. It's a terrifying statistic, and yet one that was repeated across Europe. After not finding anyone at his former home, Carl went to the synagogue, what had been the hub of the town's Jewish community, but he found it empty and largely destroyed. He did find one unbroken bulb in the rubble, which he picked up and which his family later gave to our museum. I haven't been able to find any photographs of the synagogue in Drama, which was, as I understand it, converted into a private home after the war. I'm also not entirely sure what this bulb was used for. However, we have photographs from other synagogues from Greece that may give us some clues. And a closer look at the bulb itself, I think, also offers a hint as to what it might have been used for. So first, some other Sephardic synagogues from the area. Here's a photograph of the 1927 opening of a new synagogue in Salonika. And one thing to notice here is the elaborate chandelier. Yeah, you can see it's really quite impressive. Remember, Thomas Edison developed electric power generators in 1882, and the electric light bulb came into use in Europe by the 1890s. For new buildings and synagogues built after those inventions, electric lighting was included in the design, and thus you see ornate lighting like this that's seen in a building from 1927. In older buildings where candles or gas lights had been in place before electricity became available, you often see simpler fixtures that often sought to convert the earlier candle holders into electric sockets. Given the relatively elaborate design of our bulb compared to the bulbs in these photographs here, and here's a more recent view of the synagogue. Again, you can see this elaborate chandelier. But our bulb is so elaborate, it wouldn't have been in a chandelier like this. It wouldn't have been as part of a massive chandelier. I think we can assume that the bulb probably came from a synagogue that had adopted lighting to electricity because it was a later addition, that the building had predated electric lighting. Here's a photograph of a synagogue on the island of Rhodes that dates back to the 16th century. And here, although there's an elaborate chandelier, it and the wall sconces are simpler than the ones in the later synagogue. Indeed, you may be able to see, and I know this is blurry, but you may be able to see that the wall sconces were originally designed for candles, and then the candle holder was literally turned upside down when it was wired for light bulbs, and the candles were simply exchanged for the light bulb. Much closer to home, we have another similar example. This is a photograph of the Eldridge Street Synagogue on the Jewish Lower East Side, which had electric lighting added in 1907, more than a decade after it first opened. And you can see similar chandelier to the one used in Rhodes, where the candle holders are turned upside down when they were wired for light. One other thing you can find in both buildings that were rewired for electric light soon after it became available, and those that were designed with electricity in mind in the early 20th century, is a celebration of the light bulb. Today we kind of cover light bulbs up, we put shades on them, we're not too excited to see a bare light bulb. But for example, you can see at the Eldridge Street Synagogue, the lights on the ark, where the Torahs, the sacred Torahs are held, were left bare. Or look at the candelabra in this different view from one of the synagogues in Salonika. Our bulb may well have been placed in a fixture like those. The elaborate design of our bulb does give me some pause, however. First, it looks like the blue covered much more of the bulb than we see today. You can see the residue of the blue on the outer rim, as well as on the decorative leaves that encircle the central design, and one of the lines that emanate out from that central design. It looks like everything except the central design was originally blue. It also appears that the central pattern, the menorah or the Star of David, were originally highlighted or colored in white or even perhaps gold. You can see places where some of that non-blue color remains. So this was a bulb that would have given a distinctive glow rather than a bright light. Perhaps it would have been in a more prominent location, like standing atop the ark, like in this photograph. It may well have been a memorial light turned on for the anniversary of a person's death, although it seems a bit large for that to me. Or perhaps it was an eternal light, although generally those are fixtures that rely on easily replaceable bulbs rather than something ornate like this one. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know exactly what it was used for. There is one more thing that I wanted to share about this bulb that may tell us about the synagogue that it came from. A close look at the bulb shows that the menorah on one of its sides is not the traditional decorative menorah. Count the branches and you'll see that there are 9 branches on this menorah. The Bible describes the decorative menorahs, that decorative menorahs should have 7 branches, not 9. And a look at the interiors of the synagogues in Salonika shows those 7-armed decorative menorahs prominently displayed. The 9-armed menorah is specifically used for one particular holiday, Chanukah, that celebrates the Maccabean revolt in 160 BCE against the ancient Greek king Antiochus IV, who had forbidden Jewish religious practices in the kingdom of Judea in present-day Israel. The Maccabean revolt, issued in the Hasmonean dynasty, destroyed Greek altars and reasserted Jewish practices in Judea until the Romans conquered 130 years later. So the Greek synagogue that this bulb came from chose to honor that reassertion of Jewish practices in Judea over ancient Greek beliefs. You might say, well, you know, that's not a lot of information to go from just a picture of a menorah. But again, this is not a decorative menorah. This is a menorah that you'll really only see in Chanukah. And there's one more piece of evidence I wanted to show you. On the other side, if you look closely, it's not just the Star of David, there's something in the middle. This is the Lion of Judah, another symbol of Judaism tracing back to one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, there are many versions of the Lion of Judah, and it's not uncommon to find both of these symbols combined, the Star of David and the Lion of Judah. But there is a striking similarity between the image on our bulb and the symbol used to mark the first Zionist Congress organized in Basel in Switzerland in 1897 by Theodor Herzl, which called for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. You see here the symbol chosen for that first Zionist Congress, and around the edge or around the rim, it says in Hebrew, First Zionist Congress, Basel, and the year 1897. Here, the bulb and that symbol are side by side, and I think you can see the similarities that are not just by chance. This is a bulb that took on the Zionist symbol. And I will add that Theodor Herzl and the early Zionists embraced the Maccabean revolt in a way that previous Jewish thinkers had not. In Herzl's book, The Jewish State, published in 1896, he used the Maccabees in particular to symbolize his hopes for the future, writing, as you can see here, a wondrous breed of Jews will spring up from the earth. The Maccabees will rise again. We shall live at last as free men on our own soil and in our own homes peacefully die. So our bulb has both a celebration of the Maccabees through the inclusion of the Chanukah and the symbol of the first Zionist Congress. This design makes me think it likely came from a synagogue that embraced the Zionist movement in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't narrow it down much, but in fact, the Zionist movement really divided the Jews of Europe in the early 20th century. It was hardly something that all Jews embraced. Many thought Jews should focus their energies on strengthening their ties to their existing nations rather than promoting the need for an independent Jewish state. The Holocaust, of course, would change that equation dramatically. In drama, a Holocaust Memorial was erected in 1999 to draw attention to the Jewish community that no longer exists there. On the top, it reads, "Remember and do not forget," in Greek, Hebrew, and English. The body of the memorial then says, "The municipality of Drama does not forget the 1,200 Jewish citizens who were arrested on March 3rd, 1943, and were killed by the German conquerors." And on the side, it lists the number of Jews lost from Drama and some of the other surrounding cities. Carl Gatenio, when he returned to Drama in 1945, tried to restart his life there, resettling in his boyhood town with his new wife and starting a family. Their first son, David, born in 1946, would be the first Jewish child born in Drama after the war. But Drama was not the same place it was in 1945 as it had been in 1938. And Carl decided to move his family to America in 1951, settling first in Detroit and then moving eventually to New York. Here's the family. I know it's a rough picture, but I love the photo. A family on the USS Argentina, a Panama Pacific Line ship that brought them to the United States. Somewhere in their belongings when this photo was taken was the light bulb from Drama, a remnant of the Jewish community that they brought with them to America. Eventually, the bulb was passed down to David and his wife Rachel, who live here in Nassau County, who donated it to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. David told me that he still feels strong ties to Drama. Indeed, here is a photograph of David and his wife Rachel at the Holocaust Memorial in Drama a few years ago. But Drama is no longer that center of rich Jewish culture that it was before 1939. The bulb that we display in our gallery is a reminder of that culture and the loss that the Holocaust brought us all. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you again for joining me today. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A window, and I will do what I can to answer them. Let me, as always, remind you of some of our upcoming programs and our current exhibitions. First, I want to highlight that what I mentioned at the opening of our program, our museum is open for visitors, but we ask you to try and make a reservation if you can. And I hope you'll come and see our current exhibition, The Holocaust Through the Eyes of a Survivor's Daughter, Sculptures by Tamima, which includes 30 sculptures by an acclaimed artist here in Nassau County who processes both her mother's experience during the Holocaust and her own experience as the child of a survivor through her art. In terms of programming, tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., we're holding a program in conjunction with the Memorial and Education site at the House of the Wannsee Conference to mark the anniversary of a meeting that took place in January of 1942 in Wannsee, which launched all wings of the Nazi government into genocide. This was a crucial step in the Holocaust, and we're honored to have Dr. Matthias Haas from the House of the Wannsee Conference providing the presentation. It's at 11 o'clock because for him it's going to be 5 o'clock in the evening. Tomorrow at 2:30, I should also say my colleague Helen Turner and I are launching the first of our 8-session class designed to help children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors preserve their family histories. If you're the child or grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, you still have time to sign up for this class that I hope will provide a structure to preserve your family's history. And one last thing to mention, if you haven't signed up yet to attend or support HMTC's virtual gala in honor of our founder, Boris Charton, which will be held next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., please go to our website and purchase a ticket. First, it's going to be a great evening with a live performance by the Israeli singing sensation, the man who also played Jean Valjean in Les Mis on Broadway, Dudu Fisher. And second, you'll be supporting the work of Boris Charton, or the work that Boris Charton started and that we continue even 20 years later, trying to make sure that the lessons from the Holocaust are never forgotten. You can find more details about those programs and all our schedule on our website at www.hmtcli.org under the Events tab. Okay, let me get to your questions. I see that Felice has asked if any of the 39 survivors stayed in Drama or did they all emigrate. As far as I know, the Jewish population did go to zero. I think people have returned at this point. So there is a small Jewish community there, but the survivors, the 39, none of them all stayed there. None of them stayed there forever. Okay, well, thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you tomorrow at our program about the Wannsee Conference or at some of our other programs soon. Have a wonderful day. Take care.